Day 13 of the case of People versus Ramos. Closing arguments and the prosecution's up first. DA Tony Rakakis gave a 2.5-hour closing argument and he's still not done. He's telling the jury not to let these officers get away, to send a message to the community that police officers cannot use excessive force. He bolstered his case by showing the video, that tragic video showing Kelly Thomas beaten to death. The sounds of Kelly Thomas begging for his dad, begging for air, begging for the right to be relieved from the brutal beating. Rakakis is hoping that the jury focuses on the video. He also spent a great amount of time poo-pooing the defense case, claiming that the defense was trying to smear Kelly Thomas, calling him a drug addict, trying to claim that Kelly Thomas had a prior use of violence, but there was no violence on Kelly Thomas' part on the night he was beaten. The whole argument is that the DA is trying to prove that the police officers had a duty to stop the beating and they never stopped. They never stopped until Kelly Thomas was dead. And that Officer Ramos had the fundamental obligation to stop the other officers from beating Kelly Thomas. Ramos' failure to stop the other officers constitutes a dereliction of duty and an omission of his responsibility to stop Kelly Thomas from being beaten. The other half of the prosecution case will take place this afternoon, where the prosecution will finish his closing argument in the case of People versus Ramos. I've been practicing law for 24 years, and a couple of things I know for a fact. You cannot win a case in closing argument, and that's what I believe the prosecution is trying to do right now. The prosecution has spent 2.5 hours in closing arguments trying to convince the jury that they should come back with guilty verdicts. Let me tell you right now, that's 2.5 hours too long, because they're not finished. They're going to spend at least 3 to 4 hours trying to convince this jury to convict these two officers. You will bore a jury to death. Another factor, jurors will not play into the sympathy or emotional game. And the prosecution has played the video over and over and over again. The video showing Kelly Thomas being beaten. The video where you hear Kelly Thomas crying for help. The tears of the Thomas family. These factors will not play in the jury's deliberation because they're obligated to follow the law. And the law does not take into consideration emotions and sympathy. In my opinion, the prosecution should wrap up their closing argument and rely on the objective facts, and this jury will render a correct verdict. Whether it's guilty or not guilty, the jurors will look at the facts and not on emotions. After the prosecution rests its case, then the defense will have the opportunity to give closing argument. And I guarantee you, they will attack the prosecution case. For example, it was not just Ramos and Cicinelli who administered a beating to Kelly Thomas. Other officers did so, but yet the prosecution is claiming that Ramos and Cicinelli are responsible. The defense will argue that Kelly Thomas was a drug-crazed individual with a badly damaged heart, and that Kelly Thomas had a propensity to engage in violence. He attacked his mother, he attacked his grandfather, so he attacked police officers. All the defense has to do is create reasonable doubt. The defense only needs one juror to call a mistrial. And the defense job is much easier than the prosecution. Where the prosecution needs a unanimous verdict, the defense only needs one juror to win this case and get a hung jury. This is Leo Terrell for ClearTheCourt.com.